Screen share. Sharing. Okay, recording. Good. All right. There we go. All right. So I am doing my presentation on African American women in sports. And so basically, I'm just going to be looking at a couple different women from a couple different eras. Some are going to be from the 50s and 60s. Others are going to be more current, more like the 2000s and 2010s. And so why is this not working? There we go. All right. So for my introduction, I posed my first research question. It was just how did these women become pioneers in their sports and become role models for younger generations of African American women? And based on the readings that I found and the interviews that I listened to, many of these athletes that I'm going to be talking about, they have faced open racism at some point, mostly in their childhoods, but they'll still face it, especially for the older women. They faced it a lot of the times when they were playing their professional sports as well. So from that, I was able to argue that even though they still face this open racism, and constant just uh demeaning, what's the word I'm looking for here, uh the way they're treated, I guess. And anyway, so I'm just going to argue that they all through that they stood tall and they became pillars of hope for young women to be just like them. So there we go. Okay, so the first lady I'm going to talk about is Wilma Rudolph. She was born prematurely in 1940 in Tennessee. She was the 20th of 22 siblings, and Rudolph suffered from several early childhood illnesses, including pneumonia, scarlet fever, and polio. She was luckily able to overcome her illnesses and learn to walk again by the age of 12. While she was still a sophomore at Tennessee State, she competed at the U.S. Olympic track and field, uh, for the Olympic trials, and she became one of the most popular athletes in the 1960 Rome Olympics and emerged from the Olympic Games with the nickname the Tornado and the fastest woman on earth. In the 1960 Rome Olympics, uh, it launched Rudolph into the public spotlight, and the media cast her as America's athletic leading lady and a queen, with praises of her athletic accomplishments as well as her feminine beauty and poise. In the picture, you can clearly tell that she's holding up three medals. So she's actually the first first woman to ever win three Olympic medals in in the single Olympic game. So she won it for, I believe, a 100-meter relay, 100-meter solo race, and I think the 400-meter. Um, but more about her. Rudolph's legacy lies in her efforts to overcome obstacles that included childhood illnesses and physical disabilities to become the fastest woman runner in the world in 1960. At the 1960 Rome Olympics, she became the first woman to win, three gold medals, and Rudolph was on the first role model, or one of the first role models for Black and female athletes. Her Olympic success gave a tremendous boost to women's track in the United States, and Rudolph's celebrity also caused gender barriers to be broken at previously all male track and field events, such as the Millrose Games. In addition to her athletic accomplishments, Rudolph is remembered for her contributions to youth, including founding and heading the Wilma Rudolph Foundation, which continues to train young athletes. The next female athlete that I'm going to be talking about is Althea Gibson. And Althea Gibson was born in 1927 in the town of Silver, South Carolina. And the family moved to Harlem as part of the Great Migration during the Great Depression. And she ended up learning how to play tennis when she was living in her apartment in Harlem, because during the day, the cops would shut down the street and they would allow the kids of Harlem to play organized sports. So she actually ended up playing, she picked up a tennis racket, and she ended up becoming the leading, uh, she was basically the best tennis player in Harlem. And from there, her tennis career kind of took off. So in late 1958, having won 56 national and international singles and double titles, she ended up retiring from amateur tennis prior to the Open era. That's what we have today. Because there was no prize money at major tournaments and direct endorsement deals were prohibited. So players were limited to meager expense allowances strictly regulated by the USTA. And so a quote by her, she said, "The truth, to put it bluntly, is that my finances were in heartbreaking shape," she wrote. "Being the queen of tennis is all well and good, but you can't eat a crown, nor can you send the IRS a throne clipped to their tax forms. The landlord and grocer and tax collector are funny that way. They like cold cash. I reign over an empty bank account, and I'm not going to fill it by playing amateur tennis." So with her professional tennis career going nowhere, when I looked around me, I saw that white tennis players, some of whom I had thrashed on the court, were picking up offers and invitations, she wrote. Suddenly it dawned on me that my triumphs were not had not destroyed the racial barriers once and for all, as I had perhaps naively hoped. Or if I did destroy them, they had been erected behind me again. And in a 1977 historical analysis of women in sports by the New York Times columnist Willem C. Roden, wrote, "Althea Gibson and Wilma Rudolph are without hesitation the most significant athletic forces among Black women in sports history. While Rudolph's accomplishment brought more visibility to women as athletes, Althea's accomplishments were more revolutionary because of the psychosocial impact on Black America. Even to those Blacks who hadn't had the slightest idea of where or what Wimbledon was, her victory, like Jackie Robinson's in baseball and Jack Johnson's in boxing, proved again that Blacks were given an opportunity, when given an opportunity, could compete at any level in American society." The next is going to be Serena Williams, and this is definitely a more popular player nowadays. She's still playing, and I feel like a lot of people nowadays, she's definitely gotten enough recognition to where she's a household name now. But Serena Williams moved to Compton, California, with her family and started playing tennis at the age of 4. She was homeschooled and played tennis every day. And Serena was a former number one tennis women's single tennis champion. She has won 23 Grand Slam titles and the most by any player in the Open era, and the second most of all time behind Margaret Court. Williams is hailed by many coaches, players, and sportscasters to be one of the best female tennis players of the Open era. And in 2018, uh, the panel selected Serena as the greatest female tennis player in the Open era. Yeah. So her numerous victories on the court have largely been a positive influence on young girls and boys who see Williams as a role model and an ambassador of tennis. However, there's a sizable percentage of people who disagree with considering Serena Williams as a role model. Some commentators, players, and sports writers regard Williams as the greatest female tennis player of all time. Also, in 2016, Serena Williams wrote an open letter in Porter Magazine's Incredible Women of 2016 to speak out about gender equality and her personal struggles as a woman in tennis. She noted that women's contributions to the sport of tennis are not recognized in the way men's contributions are recognized. She also called out issues of equal pay in tennis, and she ended the letter stating that she hoped that her letter would inspire a new generation of women to push for greatness and follow their dreams with steadfast resilience. Williams received several awards for her activism, namely those directed towards Black communities, and she was listed among the 35 most remarkable and beautiful Black women in the world by Essence magazine. The NAACP honored Williams with the President's Award at the annual NAACP Image Awards. And the last athlete I wanted to talk about was Simone Biles. So Simone was actually born in 1997 in Columbus, Ohio, and her and all 4 of her siblings went in and out of foster care. She decided to switch from public schooling to homeschooling, and this allowed her to get more training time during the day. And when she went into the Olympics in 2016, she won 4 gold medals at one Olympic game. And that set an American record for most gold medals for women's gymnastics at a single Olympic Games. and equal the number of other records with her medals won in Rio. With a combination total of 30 Olympic and World Championship medals, Biles is the most decorated American gymnast in the world, and the and oh no, yeah, so she's the most decorated American gymnast and the world's third most decorated gymnast. Biles and her teammate Gabby Douglas are the only American female gymnasts to win both the individual all-around gold and team gold at the same Olympiad. Douglas won both in the 2012 London Games, and Biles was chosen by Team USA to be the flag bearer at the closing ceremonies, becoming the first American female gymnast to receive this honor. Okay. And so that basically wraps up my presentation. And the reason why I believe that this is so important is because nobody has really talked about how women's athletes have been playing just as well as men and have been competing on the same level, but they've gotten zero recognition. I would say more recently, the WNBA has been a great example of this. Um, I would say that they have gotten a lot of recent recognition just because of the efforts of the women that are playing in the WNBA. But when it comes to single events like these gymnasts and tennis players and uh, uh, sprinters, that aren't in a team setting, it's a lot harder for them to speak up because it's just them in their sport. They don't have a team to rally behind. So for these women, I think this is going to be a really important because it's going to help prove that um, not only can women be role models for young kids as well, especially Black female athletes. It's because recently there has been more, but in the last 60 years, there has been almost zero Black female role models for young African American children to model themselves after, besides Wilma Rudolph and Althea Gibson. So I think the research on these two specifically are going to be really important. But anyway, yep. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Uh,